Welcome to Casual Watch Talk, the podcast from the Casual Watch Reviewer YouTube channel. Join us as we talk everything watches, from watch collecting, the latest horology news and interviews. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe on your favourite podcast app. Let's dive into the show. Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Talk. This is episode 16. I'm joined by my co-host Chris. How have you been this week, Chris?
Pretty good. Good evening, Sam.
Evening. Yeah, it's been an interesting week with us again, both working from home. But as usual, let's kick this off with what watch have you been wearing in your quarantine this week?
Well, it's been the star of the Instagram show. It's my Bell & Ross Zin 103. It's a 20-year-old chronograph, but it was pressure tested and had the crown fixed last year. So I'm totally confident that dunking it in soapy water is fine. And I've had a gray NATO and a green NATO that have alternated taking trips into the washing machine. So. Oh,
yes. And if you want to hear more about the reason behind that, listen to last week's Casual Watch Talk episode where we talked about is a NATO strap sanitary. And then next, of course, have you had a watch obsession this week?
Oh, yeah, I have. And we talked a little bit about this earlier. So I got the Orient in from Joma Shop. It arrived. So that was the blue Orient. It's not the Bambino. It kind of looks like the Bambino. It's one of their dress watches. And it was $99 and it was no tax and it was free shipping. And it showed up and I opened it up, I quarantined it a little bit, a little gloved up, because it was coming from New York. So it kind of hung out for a little bit and then I swabbed it down. Total disappointment. Just total disappointment.
Yeah.
So the color that, and this, I mean, so I'm a guy, so I have some experience with e-commerce stuff and I know how important color is, especially like any sort of
like
clothing, shoes, watches. I mean, the color, it's just so important. And once again, they couldn't do the color right. So it was this bright blue and I thought it had white indices and white hands. Turns out they were polished silver and they were completely 100% reflecting a white background. So they looked white, but they were polished silver. And the color blue was not this sharp royal blue. It was a like greenish blue. And I took one look at it and I was like, ugh.
I only saw a picture of it. And honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a non-fake watch look so fake.
It looked like a Bambino knockoff.
Yeah, it was a really weird, because I mean, I've only had experience, I've owned a couple of Orients and stuff like that, but they're known for their quality. They're known for putting their parent company Seiko to shame sometimes for the value to money, and it's what a shame that was.
It really comes down to, for me, it was just, it did not look like it looked in pictures. So to Joma Shop's credit, sent them an email. They got right back. They sent PDF of a postage, return postage. So that is on its way back. So disappointed, but
maybe this is a topic for an entire show in itself. But I've had positive experiences with Joma Shop where I've sent something back. I bought a Fortis B42 watch. Now, this is the watch that Roscosmos use, so it's the slightly bigger watch. Roscosmos use this chronograph, but they make a non-chronograph version. And when it arrived, well, first of all, it was titanium, and it had a titanium bezel, and it felt very cheap, but it was weird because the dial it was very big and it looked empty. It's like they just took the chronograph watch and took the chronograph. It looked like there was a space left for where the chronograph dial should go. So it didn't look right.
Right.
And then I thought to myself, well, I'll put it on a NATO, as you do. Put it on a NATO. Yeah. But on a Fortis watch, it has like a bar that goes through. They're not pins. It's like a very industrial bar. So I undid the bar pulled the strap off, put it on a NATO. It didn't look quite right. And then I tried to get the leather band back on, but it had a solid plastic insert into it. And I think there was an issue with the moulding, because once I put the band back on, I couldn't get the holes to line up either side. It was so tight, and I must have spent easily 6 or 7 hours trying to get the band back onto the watch. It was just every time you pushed it in and misalign it the other side. And you wanted to get your money back. You didn't want to damage it. Absolutely. And it was the most frustrating experience I've ever had replacing a watch strap. Now, I made an upload on this, one of my very early ones, and the amount of comments that I got, nasty comments I got on that. And and one of my defenses I say is, look, Joma Shop took this watch back. So if they didn't see a defect with it either, they wouldn't have given my money back.
Yeah, that's
true. And they actually gave me my money back. But that put me off Fortis for a long time, actually, because
their watches look great. I wanted, we talk about obsession. I was obsessed in the Space Watch, in the one that they issue, the chronograph. But there's little things about them that they're a little off. They're just like the main crown doesn't screw down. So like you get it and you're like, wait, you have screw down pushers, but you don't, but the crown doesn't screw down.
Yeah.
It's a little, and like the decisions they made on stuff was just kind of odd. But again, going back to, Joma Shop, my first Swiss watch, Hamilton, my Khaki King, came from them. So that was a bunch of years ago. No issues with them. You hear, I think the watch community kind of goes back and forth on the the gray market, and they vilify it a little bit. And you're like, no, it's not. It's part of the market. It's part of how this all works.
Yeah, exactly. And where do you think they get the majority of these watches from, especially the Omega watches? Omega was dumping them for a long time through channels. It's not this nefarious. There is no guy sort of deep throat in a car park can't turn up with 8,000 Omega watches in the back of a blacked out sedan, and he's like, oh, and then Mr. Joma Shop comes along and they do this like shady deal with only in cash. Yeah, I mean this is a legitimate way of they dump stock.
Exactly, and realize that's some people drinking the AD Kool-Aid, the authorized dealer Kool-Aid. So if you're an authorized dealer, of course you don't want your watches showing up on third-party sellers. Of course not. This is, every industry has these weird agreements where, oh, well, you're not going to get the warranty, and we're going to deny your warranty and But everything I've heard and my experience with gray market as well as Joma Shop has been completely fine.
And the other thing as well is you'd be breaking some serious customer regulations, wouldn't you? Some customer rights by not servicing it. And you're telling me that if I bought a Speedmaster off Joma Shop and then tried to go into an Omega and they started rolling me around about it, I think you could kick up that much of a fuss about it that they would probably, or who knows, but they might cover it.
In a lot of cases, they won't give you the warranty card.
Yeah.
So depending on the, so for the Hamilton, I didn't get a warranty card, but everybody I read about this watch and Hamilton and researched and did my due diligence to check it out was like, you're gonna get it and it's gonna run great for the first 10 years and then you're gonna check it and it's gonna be fine. So I was like, oh no, I don't have a 2-year warranty from the manufacturer. I still have a 2-year warranty, or even a 3. I think they extended, but I had a warranty from Joma Shop. They would have taken it back, and they would have fixed it. So,
and this is going to lead into one of our main stories. I think we're just going to chat. We haven't got a real main topic we're going to focus on. We're probably just going to talk through a lot of these news stories in a bit more depth, because there was some interesting ones for sure this week.
Now, what is your watch obsession this week?
Well, that's good. What I've been wearing the most is my little Japanese Citizen watch turned up, and I absolutely love it. It's a titanium watch, the Eco Drive Land watch, it's called. It sets itself off the atomic time, and I think we talked about this in one of the podcasts where it only sets itself from the Japanese clock.
Mm-hmm.
I managed to fool it using that app. So I made a video on how to use this app. It's an iOS app. You can fool it into...
Yeah.
But it's mechanized. So the hands start moving, the dial, the date wheel starts moving. It's a wonder to behold. I'm just about to upload a sort of unboxing review. I
got a sneak preview, and you guys will enjoy that. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool watch.
Yeah, it's the PMD 56-2952 Eco Drive, Japanese only, and Citizen have done an amazing job of this. I put it on a NATO strap, and it just completes the look. It came on a titanium bracelet, which is very well machined, but check out the review of it. I talk a lot about the titanium bracelet, but it's a quartz watch, and I've never been happier. In fact, I kept it on kanji date because it just looks cool. It's a Japanese domestic one, so on the kanji day, I should say. So I've got the normal day, but it just looked cool. Although I did forget what the day was today. I was when we were chatting before, I was like, "Oh, we don't normally do a podcast on a Wednesday," and it wasn't. It was Thursday. I think the days are kind of melding into one.
Yes, I'm having that same problem over here.
Yeah, and then I picked up of course, I got that Swatch, the Tokyo edition one, which I uploaded onto the Facebook group. And thank you, everyone that's we only have had the Facebook group up for maybe 2 weeks, but a lot of you have joined. Thank you so much. And also, thank you for sharing a lot of your pictures of watches. We had a great Certina Diver, a personal favourite of mine.
I love it. Yeah.
So thanks to Robert for that.
Yeah, it's a great watch. And yeah, it's on my... what did I put? I said top pick for vintage diver.
And then one of the early podcasts I did before Chris was my co-host was with Todd, who is a collector of vintage Seiko chronographs. And if you've listened to that podcast, if you like that one, you'll actually get to see a picture. He's put a picture on the Facebook group. So head on over to Casual Watch Talk, the Facebook group. We'd love to continue the conversation there and love to see some pictures of your watches. So. And then, wow, my watch obsession this week is that new Christopher Ward GMT looks awesome. It's a GMT watch, and they've made GMT watches before. They use a Solita GMT movement. They made one that was like a Pepsi version, looked awesome, but this one is black with yellow accents, and the bezel has the time zone cities on it. I don't know what it is about this, but it just looks incredible.
What just hit me is it reminds me of the old Seiko GMTs, which I wish they made. I wish Seiko would still do a mechanical GMT. But that's what it reminds me of. That's that style with the words of the cities printed out on the rotating bezel. And then the way they did the 24-hour markers on the inside. Really reminds me of the blue and red. I don't know what model it is, but the old Seiko world timers that they had. Christopher Ward stuff. From a design standpoint, from a watch standpoint, I think they've got it. I think they've got it down. From a design standpoint, I think they're still, and they still, they get guff for this. I'm not going to be the first one to give them guff for this. We're still sort of solidifying what their style and their design, their logos and stuff, and their hands and stuff. I mean, it's not usually consistent. They've changed hands many. I mean, they'll change. There was one model where they kind of did it mid model. They changed the hands on it. So I'd like to see just consistent stuff like this. This looks like a Christopher Ward world timer, which is great. So the design language that they've adopted, they're sticking with. That's good. And then it harkens, like I said, that sort of Seiko world timer feel to it. It's really cool. Now it's what's it, 41, 42?
It's a 41 millimeter case, and with it on its steel bracelet, they're knocking it out for $1,250. Which is a great price, but last year, for part of the year, they ran an offer where it's $250 off, and they do some incredible sales. Like, they're probably the best sales a watch company ever does, and I like the way they explain. They actually explain how they price things as well, They're very transparent. I certainly like these new watches that are coming from. The watches they had years ago with like the larger W on the, I wasn't feeling those at all. I don't feel any of their current dive watches, but the retro dive watches I like. The racing ones, the military ones as well. They've got some interesting designs to them for sure. I'd prefer them more if they had the date on them, but of course that's subjective to everyone.
It's got, now I see it's domed sapphire. So it definitely has that vintage feel to it, which I like that for sure. So it reminds me of my Bell and Ross, my GMT.
Well, shall we do a couple of news stories, and we'll probably talk through these a bit longer than we normally do. Just I think some of these do need a further explanation. That's why we opted for not having a predominantly main topic today. There's a couple of ones around Breitling. There's some new watches from Swatch, but let's talk about the first Breitling story. And Breitling are saying that they're going to start production again on April the 7th. Now, for anybody listening to this in the future, most of the world is still largely in quarantine.
Sheltering in place.
Sheltering in place for the COVID-19 virus. So I imagine Breitling must employ quite a few people. They're not opening the Grenken office, but they are opening one of their plants, which is in La Château de Fond. La Château de Fond.
Yeah, that's predominantly where most, if not a large majority of factories for Swiss watches are made.
You've got workers, obviously, that can work from home, some of the process people, but those watchmakers, the highly skilled ones, I assume that they largely can't work from home, but also they're highly skilled watchmakers that you can't run the risk of them getting sick. So I wonder what the idea is here from Breitling. I mean, they've obviously done a risk assessment and things like that, but
if they can do it, then I bet most of the manufacturing places in that area can do it. So they must be working with the Swiss government to say, because they're now on the backside of it, their cases are steady, and I'm sure they have the testing. And we're we're ramping up here, and we don't have the test. If you think you had it, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, or maybe you thought you had a flu or something, like, you're not getting tested unless you are super, super sick and, need to go to the hospital. That's the only way you're getting tested here right now. So but I see that now that the wave has passed, these companies are now, the governments are now relying on, okay, so we're gonna test everybody. So then once you get into that, then okay, well, no one in the factory has it. And so then, and if you think you have it or you get sick or whatever, you can go get tested. Then you find out oh, okay, well, we'll stay in quarantine, that sort of thing. I'm sure they can make some concessions to move people apart and, move some watchmaker benches apart and just be safe and smart about it.
Switzerland's had close to 19,000 cases, which it's high-ish. I mean, it's not within Europe. They're nowhere near as big as the United Kingdom has had 33,000 cases. Germany's 84,000. So they're similar to Belgium, the Netherlands, Turkey is kind of in that below 20,000 cases. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think it also maybe speaks to how their operation is. A lot of those machines, yes, there are skilled watchmakers, but a lot of this is robots and CNC machines that can run 24 hours a day. It just needs a single machine operator to make sure that you're feeding parts into it and that you're feeding sheet steel into whatever, or brass, or whatever the requirement is, and make sure the machines are fed. So that's, if you see some of these watchmaking videos, I usually notice that on the more modern factories, it's one or two guys that are feeding CNC machines, and yes, the delicate assembly is done. But I bet they're much like most companies, they're raring to get back to work for sure.
They sort of wear protective gear anyway, don't they, when you see pictures of them?
Right. What better place? My wife does cancer testing. She's still working, and I'm less nervous because of the fact that when she goes to work, she's in gloves and a mask and PPE, and they don't want to contaminate samples. And so it's that same sort of thing. So you've got a little bit of that with watchmaking. You don't want dust inside it. So you've got a clean environment. The air is recycled a lot. You have ways to clean the air even around those benches, usually in dust proof. So same sort of contamination sort of issues.
Before we dive into the next story, let's just pause very quickly for an ad break. Welcome back, everyone. So we've got a couple more stories to see us through here. The next story that I had is quite a feel-good one. Christopher Ward. So I talked about Christopher Ward with my watch obsession, but Christopher Ward, the company, is going to award 10 watches to NHS staff. So if anybody's listening to this outside of the UK, the NHS is the National Health Service for the UK. So obviously these nurses are on the front line, these healthcare workers. So Christopher Ward's going to do a competition on Instagram, I think it is, where you're going to be able to nominate a hero, an NHS hero, and then they're going to take, obviously, the top 10 and then gift them a watch. And it's one of their Trident dive watches, one of the retro ones that we've just been talking about. And I think that's quite an honourable thing to do, really. Those NHS workers are, as well as medical personnel throughout the world, are on the front lines.
For sure. And they definitely deserve to be rewarded, to be, for folks to appreciate them. That's great.
I think everybody in the UK, I mean, I know my mum worked in the NHS for most of her working career, actually. We all have stories about relatives that were saved by NHS staff and how compassionate they are. And I think that was one of the weird things, I think, for me coming over to the US was how some news organisations, and I'm not going to get political here, but some of the news organisations that I say were more right-wing leaning, the way they talk about the NHS is frankly disgusting. It's awful, quite honestly. It's a shocking for somebody from the UK.
I'm familiar with it, and I know that it is national pride about that system, how it works, how it takes care of people, how it's doing great stuff.
Commend Christopher Ward for doing that, and hopefully there'll be some other watch companies that will. But
I don't know if you saw Alton Brown. Yeah, so Alton Brown is working with Crown and Caliber, and he's donating 2 of his watches. I think he's got a Dark Side Speedmaster maybe, and one of his other watches. He's donating to them, Crown and Caliber. They're going to do an auction for it and then donate the money to the Giving Kitchen in Atlanta. So he's another watch tie-in to.
Yeah, you might, for our international listeners, might want to explain who Alton Brown is.
Oh, sure. So Alton Brown, he's got a television show that's back on the air called Good Eats. And so he's a sort of a scientist-based chef. He's got a pretty fun show, but he's also a watch guy.
Well, that's definitely a more worthy cause than. Did you ever watch the auction video when Russell Crowe was getting divorced and he was auctioning off all his watches? And
I think I caught that. Yeah.
And he explained how he bought the watches and everything, and it was like, okay, well that's cool. And
I did this movie, so I bought myself a watch or something. I remember something like that. Yeah, it was very nonchalant.
Next story is, I know you're a big fan of the Swatch System 51s, but they've made a new Petite Seconde watch, they're calling it, with a small seconds. Now, this was on Hodinkee and they did publish it yesterday. I don't know whether this is an April Fool's. I mean, they look like normal watches, so hopefully it's not an April Fool because they look pretty cool.
Hopefully
but
not.
I think they've done an awesome job of this, actually, from the renderings that they've got on the internet.
Yeah. The Petite Seconde Bleu. It's funny, they're going for the French naming. It looks pretty good. I like it. It's got the dial has got some pretty intricate stuff done to it. Looks like sunburst in the middle. I'm looking at both of them, black one and a blue one. The sunburst in the middle. Looks like the black one comes with a red small seconds. Yeah, look pretty good. So it's stainless steel, right?
Yeah, and I think they've done a great job with the hands as well. It's certainly a more refined, quite a contemporary look to it. It's certainly more refined than you would expect from a standard Swatch.
Yeah, it's not that pop art color, and it's not like that sort of like where it's just flat, where it's just a flat color, you know. It's got some detail to it.
I can't remember, maybe you know, did they ever make the original System 51 in a metal case, or is this the first time that they've done that?
No, they have. So yeah, they did a version that is in metal. So they've done them in, I'm trying to think what the what the branding was. But it was I think it was a couple years after, or maybe a year after they had done the original plastic System 51. This is going on 4 or 5 years ago, where they came out with what was the branding? It's like metal.
The Irony brand, was it, that they have?
Yeah. The Irony. Yeah, exactly. System Irony. That's right.
So I think this is a pretty cool, if you like that small seconds look, I mean, they're knocking these out at $215. I think that's a great price on a leather band.
Good. Yeah, Swiss watch, leather band.
But I presume it's going to be one of these where you can't ever service it.
Yeah, if it's System 51, it means that, it's sealed up. Also, they can be big. The plastic ones, I know the metal ones actually add a little. So I'd be curious to see what the specs are on this, if they've managed to slim it down a little bit.
And I'm on their website now, but I can't see unless I'm just not seeing it at all, I can't see where it's got the case sizing. It's just got that it's water resistant to 30 meters. Woohoo. But I can't see where they've got the but it looks smaller because the size of the strap, in comparison to the size of the strap, it looks a bit smaller, but hey, who knows?
Yeah, we'll have to get the specs on that.
Yeah, so that was a quite a cool story. I like the look of that. We've talked about this before. I'm fighting my don't buy too many swatches. I have the Damien Hirst one, and then of course I bought that Tokyo Olympics. If anyone wasn't listening to last week's show, I bought the Tokyo 2020 swatch.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard past episodes, to let everyone know, Sam is 3 Swatch watches away from a room in his house and having 1,000 of them. It's like you're gonna get to number 4 and it's gonna be like, well, I just had to buy all of them.
Oh, I know. I'm just gonna kind of go all in with it now.
Yeah. The separate wing. What are you building out shelves? Oh, these are for the Swatch.
Yeah, watch. For the Swatch watch factory. And then another interesting story, and this is alluded to this at the start. This is the second of the Breitling stories, and little plug again for the Facebook group. But we ran a little poll on the Facebook group today, and Chris, I'd love to get your opinion on this as well. There's a story on Watch Pro again. Watch Pro's been an absolute goldmine this week for stories, but Watch Pro had a story around how Breitling was, I don't know whether they're toying with the idea. I think this might be like a story where they've planted the story and then they're going to see what the reaction is to it, but they're saying that they're going to get rid of the packaging for the boxes, and it's just going to come in like a reusable, the watch is going to come in a reusable pouch that then can also be recycled. So I asked the question, what do people think of this? And I put a number of answers, and it seemed like overwhelmingly the answer that I got that most people voted for was, I prefer a reusable pouch. A box is just clutter. And then the next one was, this is an environmentally sensitive approach, which got 2 votes. And then and then somebody did vote and said that the box really adds to the experience of owning a luxury watch. And then nobody opted for my option 4, which is Breitling's being just cheap. I guess overall, what do you think of this? And then I suppose there's quite a few nuances to this as well, isn't there? But first of all, I'll ask your opinion on what you think of this overall.
I think it's good. I'm of two minds. One is the presentation. So, and I think you've talked about this before, but that sort of the more that the company spends in the box and the packaging and the presentation, you feel maybe they cheaped out on stuff for the watch. I mean, you get this definitely with micro brands, and it's sort of like the more they spend on packaging, it's like they're trying to trick you. You know, oh, this packaging is so nice, and then you open it up and you're like, yeah. From that standpoint, I don't think, you know, I think Breitling doesn't have to worry about that.
I'm with you on that one. I prefer a reusable pouch. I think the boxes are clutter. I don't like, you know, necessarily storing the boxes. The immense opportunity that the guys at Bob's Watches give me to go to Bob's Watches, I've got to see some pretty interesting watch boxes, I'd say, that vary from works of art to the bizarre. And I think I would say the most bizarre is the ones that come with Panerai. Now, I reviewed Panerai. It was a box set of 2, and they'd reissued. One of them was a prototype that had never been issued, so they're 2 very desirable watches. And the idea of the box was it was based around the human torpedo, or I think it might be called the maial, or like I think it's like the sea pig or something it translates to in Italian. And it was what the Italian frogmen that used Panerais in military operations would get on this. You know, the thing that you basically sit on, it's like a torpedo that you drive. It's from that James Bond film Thunderball. That's what they remind me of. So it's like an undersea motorbike, I guess.
Propeller driven. Yeah, exactly.
So this box set, the wooden box was quite ornate. The 2 watches were presented nicely with extra straps. But the additional parts, they had like a little model of this human torpedo thing, which literally looked like it was made out of a resin, so it was partly broken anyway. And it looked like when you're on holiday and there's like a Statue of Liberty made out of resin that somebody's just badly painted.
I'm already gritting my teeth. I'm like, yeah.
And then there was a Haynes manual all about this human torpedo, like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what is this little desk thing and the book, which I guess would have totaled $20 or something?
Right.
What's that adding to the experience of the Panerai? In fact, I think the little model cheapened it quite a bit.
No, that's a good example of, like, I think it can be done wrong.
Yeah.
But you can have a great product, and then your presentation, you can ruin it with presentation. And for me, I think I would be okay if I was in the authorized dealer and it was a big occasion and I had saved up enough to get the watch that I always wanted, and they came out and they had the presentation box, and they open the box and it's there. And then later they're like, we just took the presentation box and we just give it to the next person. I'd kind of be okay with it. Like once that part is over, you're like, yeah, I don't need this anymore. Like, this is just taking up space. You're like, and I find, like, once the watch is old, or once you know, it's used, or, you know, at least 3 drawers over here of just watch boxes, which, you know, they're not too bad. Not too bad. It's not Sam's Swatch collection yet, but.
Well, and the funny thing is as well, I think with a lot of these, this goes back to a conversation that we had, I think it was last week, where we were discussing about how a lot of these brands would love to emulate Rolex in terms of their success, but they don't follow their playbook. So a Panerai would be an absolute prime example of this, where maybe Omega as well is like, hey, you want to be successful as Rolex. Rolex's boxes are green plastic. And the fanciest they go is there might be a cardboard sleeve on that green plastic box that's a different color other than white.
They checked that. Yeah, they checked it off. They're like, okay, we have our green box. It's fancy. It's fancy enough.
It's become an icon. Whereas, you know, I guess the craziest ones that I've seen in person, I mean, I talked about that Panerai, but have you ever seen you'll only ever see it in person if you go to Las Vegas, because Hublot do a Las Vegas. Have you seen this Las Vegas limited edition Big Bang? And it comes in basically an entire poker set with the chips.
Oh, I gotta see it.
They went all in with the Las Vegas theme. I mean, the Omega Speedmaster, it's almost such a great watch, but they're making the box is more and more ornate. I got to review that 50th anniversary one, and this thing it comes in like a suitcase.
Yeah, and all of the Omega boxes are I think are unique. I mean, when you get up to, they're all sort of like unique for whatever watch and the brand, and there's a special, like all the Speedmaster ones, there's tons of special ones with pictures of the moon on this side, and yeah.
But what do you do with that box? You literally have to store it where you keep your luggage for holiday because it's that big.
Yeah, this big suitcase. Oh, let me get the suitcase down. Oh, this is my Speedmaster taking up.
One of my guilty pleasures is watching the occasional Producer Michael video on YouTube. In fact, I've reached out to him and he has offered to, this was a while ago, I need to contact him again actually, maybe when all this COVID stuff settles down, but he's got the Jacob & Co. watch where it's the Astronomica or whatever it is with the...
Right.
It is Jacob & Co., I think, where it's the solar system, but the box itself has like a little mini LCD screen in it, and then when you open it up, it plays this music, the box plays... The box itself is shaped like a meteorite from memory. It's a thing of beauty, but again, like you said, you're only getting that little thrill once, and then of course you've got to show it to everybody.
Right, exactly. And then once everyone's seen it, then you're like, I guess I just have to keep this with my old computer box and my old TV box up by my luggage. It's like not in the, it's not going to be in the living room. We're not going to be displaying this. Sorry.
A lot of the times, I think that certain micro brands suffer from this. Certainly the ones where they make more dress watches. Some of the ones I've reviewed, and I make reference to it in the review, it comes in like a wooden box or something like that. And to me, a micro brand is you're paying for the effort and the quality of the components that they're putting into the watch.
Right.
I actually don't like it to come in anything other than cardboard box and maybe a watch roll. I mean, Laurier do an awesome job of this. They include like a watch roll, and the thing just comes in a cardboard box that then they like hand wrap themselves in like brown paper. It looks very industrial. But some of them you see where it's got that sort of faux velvet interior, and it's like, what am I going to do with this box? Like the watch is... That's
a great point, Sam. The money, you take a microbrand watch where they're competing in a, let's say, a $500 to $700 space. If they're spending, let's just throw out a number, if they're spending $30 on the presentation with the box and the thing and the tissue paper and the whole, you know what I mean? Like, that's money that's coming away from what they could have spent on making that a better watch.
Exactly. And just a little comedy joke here, but I was slightly relieved when my beautiful little Citizen that I'm wearing now didn't turn up in that ridiculous scuba tank.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right.
What do you do with that thing?
They made 1 million of those things, but yeah, the scuba tanks, you're like, well, I'm not going to sell Citizen watches, so I don't know where this is going to go.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
It's not even that protective to ship the watch in because it kind of rattles around inside it anyway. I'm not sure. Right. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, somebody probably ordered like a boatload of them, and then they're like, oh, well, this comes on every watch now.
Well, right. This is now the green Rolex box is now the the pressure vessel.
Yeah, exactly. And then
scuba tank.
So we talk about boxes and where do you store them, etc. But I mean, there's a whole cottage industry of selling the boxes separately, isn't there? I mean, you only have to go on eBay to see these for sale. I mean, would you ever buy an ornate watch box minus the watch?
Only if I didn't have it and I thought I could sell the watch that it was for more money, because I see that all the time. And I'm not going to say a victim of it, but I bought a used watch on eBay that came with, I know, was a completely different for a completely different watch. And I know because when I opened it up, it had the manual for this completely different watch, but it was so that whole box and papers thing, I think, is a little overblown. At the same time, you want to find, if you're looking for something used, yes. Would you would you absolutely love to find something in like new old stock condition, in perfect condition, that was placed inside the watch box with the receipt in it, in the back with the luggage, right? You would want that, but who's doing that? No one's doing that. I'm not doing that.
And then, I suppose the final point on this, because we're coming close to the kind of end here, but what do you think about not only a Breitling talking about the lack of a box, but they're now talking about the papers essentially being online? I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it's okay. I think that it's not that it's what we want. I mean, going back to like looking for watches online, like everybody wants that, but it's just not realistic. And I mentioned Hamilton doesn't put a serial number on their watch anymore. So, I mean, you can't even like track most Hamiltons down. And so then I could see more companies doing this sort of online registry and not having all this stuff with the box and everything. But I know, as long as you can authenticate it. So there are some companies that won't do this, and then there are some companies that will, and I think we'll get there eventually. I don't understand in the 21st century how watch companies just can't immediately be like, yep, this is a real serial number. This was made in July of 1997.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Or they can't have some kind of small, if you can tag a flipping dog with a microchip.
Right.
Could they have a small microchip, maybe not even on the watch itself, maybe a tag that comes in the box or something like that you ship the watch.
Or with the warranty card or whatever.
Yeah, and then you just put some heavy layer of encryption on it so that nobody can hack the system. But I'm sure these Swiss watch companies, that would be the first thing that would happen. Somebody would just hack them, and then they'd wonder,
like, who wants some serial numbers for this? Breitling,
and Rolex is like, well, we laser engrave and we laser etch a crown into the underside of the sapphire crystal. That's a surefire way of doing it. And then every time Rolex tries to beat the forgers, it's like a competition.
Oh, it's an arms race. Oh yeah, that's a non-ending arms race. And then to your point, if you think you have a fake Rolex, you bring it into a Rolex dealer, they're not going to authenticate it. They don't want to do that. They're not going to, they're like, sorry.
Paul Thorpe did a great YouTube video on this,
Yeah, he did. I saw that. We'll have to hit that in the links. But yeah, I think it's the 21st century. We can track this stuff online. I mean, I was able to, with some of my stuff that I picked up on eBay, I was able to email the company. I was able to email Zinn and say, hey, this is my serial number. And they eventually, I mean, not quick, but they got back to me via email and said, yep, it was, manufactured in 2001, and this is what we know about it. And that it had ever been into service, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and Omega want like $110 for the archival, what do they call it? A replication of the archival documents or something. But
right, yeah.
Really interesting conversation. Let us know over on the Facebook group what you think of this. Do you like the boxes, or join in on that poll, and perhaps we'll talk about as we get more results next week. Chris, thanks so much for joining me again. You're part of the show now, aren't you? You're not joining me. We're doing this together. So
yeah.
So thanks for being on the other end.
All right. Getting it done.
Yeah. As always, guys, we really do appreciate you listening. Thank you for all the support on the Facebook group, and thank you for listening to this on your favorite podcasting app. As always, we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk. Thanks, guys. Bye.